Hi, my name is Dan. I'm here with Hanyoung and Sunny and Salim, and we are from the Android System UI and Launcher teams. We always have some fun stuff in every release. We're going to talk about some of it here. Some of it's great stuff for users. Some of it's stuff you need to know as developers. Either way, we're really proud of it. These are the people that built it. I'm super proud to be up here with them telling you about it. So we got a lot to talk about. I don't want to waste a lot of time. Hanyoung, why don't you take it away? Tell us about new stuff in icons.
OK, thank you, Dan. Hi, everybody. My name is Hanyoung Song, and today I'm going to talk about new changes that we introduced around launcher icons in O platform. OK, so what is the problem that we're trying to solve here? One of the things that developers like about pre-O Android icons is that it's very flexible. Aside from the constraint that Play Console impose on you, the 48 dp size limit, you can choose whatever shape or size or padding or shadow that you like. Of course, there's a material UI design guideline around how you should do them, but not all developers abide by them. And so this flexibility is actually a double-edged sword, because if you look at a lot of the OEM launcher screens or home screens, what you notice is that your icon doesn't look the same as what you actually added to your APK. Like this in this example of Chrome and Play Store icon, they shrink it down, and then they put it on a background color that the OEM decided. In this example, the same Play Store icon is cut around the corners. And at least these icons preserve its original look. Sometimes they even use icon packs, which completely changes how your brand identity looks like. And that's what we're trying to solve in adaptive icons. So let's bring up the slides that you may have seen Dan already presented during what's new in Android O. So there's a simple formula. App developers will provide foreground and background layers. One of these layers have to be full bleed and opaque. And the different devices, the OEM or the platform, they specify what kind of mask that will be used on these icons. And the user will see, if the mask was circle, then the user will see circle-shaped icons all across the system UI surfaces. And this not only includes the launcher, but also settings UI, apps list, apps info page, and then also the recents and overview title bar. And lastly, the share sheet dialog will also use this launcher icon, so the shape will change throughout these surfaces. If the mask was rounded direct, then the result will be a round direct icon. So while we were changing the Android the icon API, the first thing that we also changed is the visible size of the icon. Previously, it used to be 48 dp. But lately, there are a wider range of icon sizes that different launchers, third-party launchers, uses. And some of them are 60 dp, some of them are even 72 dp. So we decided that the visible size should be 72 dp. But the foreground and background layer that we actually want you to upgrade to, we want you to provide 108 dp. We want you to add 25% of the viewport inset around 4 edges, either using the extension of your foreground layer or as a transparency, so that we can do add delightful animations such as these, like the parallax and pulsing. And there's actually a lot more. But unfortunately, on your today's developer preview, you will not see any of these animations because we're still vetting how to best place these. But it will come up in future releases. So let's talk about safe zone. When you're adding your main logo or the badge of your icon in the foreground layer, you might be curious, OK, how do I make sure that all of these show up on every single platform? And that's what safe zone does for you. When an OEM defines their mask shape, it cannot cut into the safe zone. And this is enforced by the system, by the API. What this means is that if you happen to have a badge on the right bottom corner of this risky zone that I labeled, then what it will mean is that if if it's rendered on a platform that is close to a rectangle, then it may get shown. But if it's on a device where it has circle mask shape, it'll be clipped off or not shown at all. But I'm not saying that you should not add badges. Just make sure that they're inside the safe zone to be shown on every platform. OK, so let's talk about API. The main class that we added to O platform is adaptive icon drawable class. It supports 2 elements, background and foreground, and 1 attribute, drawable, where you can specify either the asset or another. Basically, you can specify either a drawable or a color. And where this class fits in the drawable family tree, its parent probably could be the layer drawable, and its half sibling will be the ripple drawable. And after you define this XML file, you don't actually specify this in Android manifest file. The old Android icon attribute is still in effect. As a matter of fact, you do not remove the legacy icon because in previous platforms before O, it will not know how to handle or inflate adaptive icons. So you still have to keep this adaptive icon. But as of O, what you do is you'd create a same name XML file as the legacy PNG asset and then add it into mipmap NUDPI. And whatever foreground and background layer needs, like this IC foreground PNG, you would add it to the density-specific mipmap directory. And at compile time, AAPT will scan your mipmap NUDPI directory. And if it sees adaptive icon, it'll move to V26 particular directory so that only platform 26 and above will inflate it and use it. One thing to note is that some of you good, like Android citizen, may already know about this round icon attribute that we added in NMR1. If you happen to be the few Android developers that did use it, then we recommend that you create the same name XML file as the legacy, as the original adaptive icon file, but the contents can be the same. Now, regarding why we decided to not deprecate this and why you have to override this, I'm not going to go into detail, but I strongly urge you to read them on our websites. Now, some of you sitting in the audience may think, 108 dp, that is really huge. And maybe, to make the matter worse, your APK size is very close to hitting that Play Console max size limit. In which case, what you can do is, in O, we added fraction type. The inset drawable support fraction type. And if you remember, the inset that I asked you to add was 18 dp. If you divide that by 108, that is 16%. So if you specify 16% as your inset, and then use your legacy, point the inset drawable's main content to be the legacy icon, then there will be no APK increase, APK size increase, and you will be able to upgrade to adaptive icons for free. And as of Android N, the vector drawables became so much more expressive that almost every element in SVG file can now be supported in vector drawables. So if you actually use vector drawables as either your foreground and background element, then your APK size will actually decrease. And now I'm going to do a demo of how the icon wizard now support creating adaptive icon wizard. If you right-click your resource directory and then choose new image asset, then you'll get this page. And here, you can configure your foreground. You can select different asset type as image. I'm going to choose image here. And then what you're seeing on the right side is this is a preview of what your icon will look like on 4 different platforms with different masks. And what you're adding into your APK is actually presented here in full bleed layers. Now, you can toggle the show safe zone to see if your foreground element is fully within the safe zone. And so that you can, as you resize, you make sure that everything is the foreground. And in background layer, I'm going to change the color to something hopefully hip, not so hip. OK, whatever. And then that's what we're going to use. And the last tab is actually very important, because as I mentioned earlier, if you just add adaptive icons, your app will not have any icons in previous platforms. So you can use this third tab to generate the legacy icon, the legacy round icon for circle shape mask shaped devices. And then this, you can also even generate the 512 by 512 image that you upload to your Play console here, and then click Next. And then this is the same directory structure that I showed you earlier on. You'll say Finish. And then since before all devices become available, you can test this on the emulator. And now I'm installing the app. And as you can see, this is the icon that I just created. And this emulator has Circle as the mask. And, oh, OK, so and so what I'm showing you right now is this is an option that you can see on the main launcher of your emulator. It lets you first, this is the what it should have been. The main mask shape on this device is Circle. But just for developer purpose, you can change the icon shape so that you can check what it will look like on other devices. And let's pick something fun, like teardrop. And so now you have teardrop shape icon without having to make any changes. That's everything to adaptive icons. And on that note, I'll pass it off to Sunny, who will tell you more about shortcuts and widgets.
Thank you, Ashwa. Hello, everyone. Just now, Yun Song talked about how to make your app icons look even better. This helps a lot in improving your app's experience. Another way to improve your app's experience is by adding shortcuts. Shortcuts allow apps to expose deep links directly on the user's home screen. For example, a Messenger app can expose shortcuts for frequently used contacts, allowing the user to get to those contacts quickly. An app can define a shortcut using API defined last year in NMR 1. It would create a shortcut info object and pass in all the related information like label, icon, and intent. Then using the shortcut manager class, it can add, update, or delete these shortcuts. The system will manage the shortcuts for the app and even back them up on the cloud if needed. These dynamically added shortcuts are shown as additional options for the app. For example, when you long-click the app icon. But the launcher can also allow the user to pin the shortcuts on the home screen, where they exist as independent icons. Previously, to create these pinned shortcuts, an app would send an install shortcut broadcast and hope that the launcher gets the broadcast and does the right thing. There are many downsides to this flow. For example, the app loses control, and there's no way for the app to know that the shortcut was added. Also, since the user is not involved in this flow, there's a potential for spam. Starting with Android O, this API will no longer work. Instead, the app would create a shortcut info object, as explained in previous slides, and call the request pin shortcut API. This will make the launcher show a confirmation prompt, allowing the user to pin the shortcut, place the shortcut on the home screen. Once the shortcut is added, it behaves like any other shortcut and can be updated using the existing APIs. Another way to create shortcut is from the widget tray. An app can define a custom shortcut which shows that configuration activity when the user tries to add them on the home screen. To define a custom shortcut, the app would declare the configuration activity in the manifest with the create shortcut intent filter. This is the activity which is started before the user adds the shortcut on the home screen, which allows the user to configure the shortcut. From this activity, the app would return the shortcut as intent extras directly to the launcher. This has similar downsides as the install shortcut flow, that the app loses control and it does not work cross-profile. In O, now app can directly return a shortcut info object and thus retain control over the shortcut. From the widget tray, a user can also add widgets. Now, this is the only way for a user to add widget. If an app wants to add a widget, it will have to explain to the user how to get to the widget tray, which may vary from device to device. Now, in O, an app can simply call the request pin app widget API. This will show a confirmation prompt similar to that of a shortcut and allow user to place the widget on the home screen. Once the widget has been added, the app would get the widget ID as part of the callback and can be used to update the widget. To summarize the changes, install shortcut broadcast will no longer work on O. Doesn't matter if the app is targeting O or not. And apps should instead use the new APIs to add shortcuts and widgets. Make sure to check out the documentation for more information on these APIs. I'll hand over to Salim for notifications.
Thank you, Sonny. Hello, everyone. I'm Salim, and I'm here today to talk about notifications. Notifications have been one of the key components of Android for many years, and in each of our previous releases, we have continuously improved on them. In Android O, we are further improving our system in many different areas. Let me first talk about the visual changes we are doing. The first key area of improvements that we are doing is the general visual notification hierarchy. For a user, not all notifications are created alike. So for example, a user cares way more about the messaging notification compared to a lower priority weather notification. But in today's world, all notifications look very similar, and the user has a really hard time parsing its notifications. So starting in Android O, we're going to be more opinionated about the order of notifications. In order to do this, we're dividing the section up in 4 different areas. On the very top, we have a new section called Major Ongoing. Below these, we have people-to-people notifications, followed tightly by general channel notifications that behave just the way they do today. On the very bottom, we also have a new section called By the Way notifications. Let me go into detail for all of these sections. So the very first section that appears on the very top is called Major Ongoing, and it is reserved for high-priority ongoing tasks. Good examples here are music notifications, like an ongoing navigation notification, or basically only something that is really important to the user, and the user must know that it exists. There are basically 2 ways how a notification can end up in this area. The first one doesn't require any developer interaction at all, and this is reserved for media notifications. Starting in Android O, we are going to colorize the background of notifications based on the media artwork. An example you can see on the slide. As you can see, we are extracting the background and the foreground color directly from the album artwork, and it will create like a really nice structured image. The second way how a notification can be colorized is by opting in by the developer. So a developer actually has to do something if he wants to get there. The way to do this is it's reserved for foreground service notifications. And they can use a new method called setColorized on the builder. The background color will then be colorized by the app-provided notification color. I want to really stress here that please, please, please don't abuse these styles. We're putting a lot of trust into the developer ecosystem, and if you see this being abused too much, we will have to change it in the future. Another thing I really want to stress that colorized isn't the new white. By default, a notification shouldn't be colorized. We don't want to create a shade of rainbow colors. We want to achieve the opposite. We want to put focus on the one notification that matters. All right, so below these ongoing notifications, we have people-to-people notifications. And research has shown that users usually care about people notification the most. And if you're interested about that, you should definitely go to this talk tomorrow. It's happening at 12:30, and it's a design talk. And just in general, if you're interested about how to post notifications and how developers today abuse all our notifications, you should really go there. So in Android O, we're transforming people-to-people notifications by, first of all, ranking them higher up, such that the user sees them more quickly. And second of all, we're also expanding their size. So even in a collapsed form, the user can see up to 3 lines of text, which obviously makes it way easier to parse a notification. And this also happens on a lock screen. So if you've been away from your phone and come back, you can immediately see like what is relevant and get back to it. All right, so below these people-to-people notifications, as I said, are the general notifications. They behave just like they did before. And so I won't go into detail to that section. So the last section in the notification shade is called by the way notifications. And this is completely new. And as you can see, in Android O, we are transforming these min priority notifications to show only a single line of text. A user, if he's interested in it, he can still make that visible by clicking on it. Good examples of notifications that should appear there are like an ongoing traffic notification, the weather, basically anything that is important and contextually relevant, but doesn't require immediate attention. All right, so this completes the visual notification hierarchy, and let's get to the next feature we are working on. So the other feature we're working on is called visual stability. And let's consider a situation you maybe encounter every day. You're carefully crafting a new reply to maybe your friend, Salim, and just about when you were to hit send, then obviously the whole notification is going to reorder. And it sucks, and probably you hit the wrong notification, and magic stuff happens, and you don't know what happened. And of course, this is a really bad experience, and we want to improve on it. And so the goal sounds relatively simple. Don't reorder notifications while you're looking at them. In reality, unfortunately, this is slightly harder than it sounds, because if you get a new message, for example, you still want to know about that, right? And yeah. We actually like this feature so much that it's even available in NMR2, and we backported it there. So if you have a phone already in NMR2, that's already there. All right, so if you know me and you know me personally, I'm all about notifications, and I'm all about animations with notifications. I care about every little detail, and even like the slightest little thing should be pixel perfect and animated. And in Android O, my designers and my coworkers let me off my leash a little bit, and I was allowed to go wild, so I created this animation between and expand, and basically where we expand the notification shade. I think this slide explains it way better than I ever could, but the key goal essentially is to create a sense of object permanence. A user should always know where his notifications are, no matter whether they're collapsed in an icon form in the status bar, or when they're expanded in the full notification shade. And obviously, there needs to be a really nice transition between those. As you can see, by the way, notifications appear on the very bottom, and they appear like as overflow dots to indicate an overflow. And they go away when you close the shade. All right, let me hand it over to Dan to talk about channels and other nice features.
Thanks, Salim.
Nice job.
Hi, it's me again. Notification channels is probably the biggest piece of new API surface in the notification system. So, and there's a lot of interesting design decisions there. Let's talk about it. OK, so let's just start with like the base assumption that apps post a lot of notifications, like kind of a lot. But that's OK, because users like notifications. Also, kind of a lot. So this is actually a good state of affairs. And to tell you the full story of channels, I need to sort of stop for a second and talk about my friend here. It might be your friend. This is my friend. This is the neurotransmitter dopamine. It's actually a cartoon of the neurotransmitter dopamine, which is fine because I'm not a neuroscientist, so you shouldn't really trust anything I say about brain chemistry anyway. But let's just say that this is dopamine. It's really, really complicated how it works in the brain, in the body. It's involved in all kinds of stuff. But what we're going to talk about today is the things that it's associated with that I show here. So things like anticipation of reward, motivation, seeking rewards, your attention, salience, you're in the moment and looking for something. Including the right word for that slide. It's basically the user engagement chemical in your brain. And so bringing this back to what we're talking about here, dopamine on its own doesn't make you happy. Right? There are lots of other great neurotransmitters and chemicals that make you feel happy and satisfied. That's not its purpose. Dopamine is to get you there. Okay? And notifications work exactly the same way. They get your attention. You become attuned to them, you anticipate a reward, so you tap on it. Maybe what's behind it is useful. Maybe what's behind it is deeply satisfying. You hope it is. Maybe it's not. So with every app, fighting for the user's limited attention span, limited supply of dopamine, limited ability to care about distractions and stuff that the device wants to tell you, suddenly you're not nearly as excited about those notifications at all. And everybody loses. The user loses. Every app loses. It's a tragedy of the commons in a classic sense. But I know that's actually not a problem for anybody in here. All of you, I can tell just by looking at you, you've all got good notifications. Like your notifications are the ones that the user really wants to see. I know that. I understand. We get ourselves. But there are other notifications out there that are not doing so well, right? So maybe you messed up one time and you made a notification that had a really loud beeping tone. And so the user banned your app forever. Or like you had a new recommendation engine and your machine learning was kind of in machine preschool and it didn't recommend the right thing. So the user blocked your app or uninstalled it. Or you're trying to try out some new kind of notification that you know that some of your users are going to love and others are going to yeah, I could take it or leave it. And you're running the risk of making them unhappy. So the Android way is to give users control. Okay? And Android already lets you have a little bit of control over apps that are maybe not quite matched to what you expect of their notifications. You can uninstall them. In Jelly Bean, we added the ability for you to block notifications, but leave the rest of the app working just as it did. In Nougat, we made that a little more refined, gave you some more options. But in Android O, we're introducing notification channels. So a channel is a data structure that you create and hand to the notification manager that describes a category of notifications from your app. The channel is specific to your app. They don't match any other app's channels. Everything on the channel shares the same behavior, and you can see some icons representing the behavior there. Behaviors like sound, vibration, whether they pop up on the screen, whether they light the LED, and so forth. And this category is arranged so that the user can understand these notifications and can control them. Category of notifications from an app with the same behavior so the user can understand and control them. All right, I've got an example here from a fictitious airline, Crane Air. Usually they post notifications like your flight is delayed, which are really important, or here's your boarding pass, also extremely useful. And then one day they post you something that says you earned 25, 60 points today if you're only 500 points away from being able to sit in the humane seats. So many users might really love this. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. Well, I'll take that last trip. I'll get to that status level. Other users might find, OK, wow, I'm just going to uninstall this app. I don't need that kind of garbage in my life. In a channels world, in Android O, you can long press this notification or use our new short swipe gesture to get to the inside of this notification, the inspector, where you can see the app that posted it. Of course, we want that accountability. We introduced that in Nougat. You also see the name of the channel. In this case, the channel is the executive program. You see that there are other channels available to sort of give you context. And of course, you see here it's called categories. Our user-facing name for this feature is categories. But of course, you and I know that we already had something inside the notification API called categories. So internally, it's called channels. But we call it categories in the UI strings. So if you got this notification, you long press, you see this screen, what do? You touch that switch on the right-hand side, and they're gone. The executive program notifications only are gone. Every other notification from that app works as it did before. OK, all right. So maybe you didn't want to block them. That's useful information, but it beeped. It made the phone do something that you didn't like. So OK, maybe this is the kind of notification that you would prefer to be more of the by the way sort that Salim described. So instead of hitting the switch, you touch all categories. All categories takes you into the Android settings app. This is not settings surface that you create in your app. This is actually in settings.apk on the ROM. It shows you the app name. It gives you a big master switch that you can block notifications, as you always have been able to do. It's got a switch that I'll tell you about at the end of the talk. And then it lists all the categories. And each of these corresponds to one of the notification channel objects that you created and handed off to the notification manager to partition your space of notifications. From this space, the user can quickly block or unblock that channel, and even dig in deeper to control the very specific details of that behavior if you really want to. Because again, the point here is that we're giving the user control over everything the app can do. Before I move on, I want to point out that there's a link at the bottom there that goes straight to your app's own notification settings. We'll talk in a little bit about what goes here and what goes there. But just to show you an example, if you touch one of those channels, you'll see a screen a little bit like this, where you can, again, block just that channel. That switch is the same as the one you saw on the previous slide on the row item. You can change the importance, which is our new system that sort of replaces the old priority APIs, if you're familiar with those. In this case, importance is what determines whether a notification pops up, makes sound, is unable to make sound, ends up in BTW, and so forth. You can actually change the sound here. You can change the vibration and a whole bunch of other stuff if you're really like a super fan of notifications. But if you're not, you may never get this far down into this screen. And again, we've got another link to your app's settings here, and we'll put extra stuff in the intent so you know exactly which channel the user was trying to configure at that time. And there's actually also a little description at the bottom. You can set a description to explain what the channel is for. I have a little bit of code here, just a little bit. There's much more extensive code samples, obviously, on d.android.com. But this is effectively how this is going to work. To set up your notification channels, you create one. The most important thing is the channel ID, which is the first parameter to the constructor there. That's just a string, and it's totally whatever you want it to be. It becomes the unique identifier for that channel when you post a notification later. Everything else about the channel you set up, it's pretty straightforward. You give it a localized string that the user can understand as the title. You give it the importance that you would like for it to have. You give it the sound that you would like for it to have. You give it the vibration that you would like for it to have, and so on. You set up all the initial parameters, all the behaviors of this channel. And then you tell the notification manager, please create this. Now, if you don't want to like track, oh, have I ever done this on this device before? Because the notification manager, of course, persists all this information between reboots. You can do this anytime your app or service starts up, and it's very cheap. If the notification manager sees that you already made this channel, you can it skips right over it. So you can do this in any of your setup code. And then when you go to post a notification, you just throw it into the builder constructor. And that's it. Not that's it for the talk. We've got more things to talk about. Remember I said that there was some question about like what settings go where. So there's app settings, the settings inside your app, and the settings that I've now shown you are inside Android. Well, truth be told, there were always two places for notification settings. There's always been a thing that you can go to in settings to control whether vibration works, how loud things are, and so forth. But we've actually made a much clearer distinction in O about what belongs where. In the app, we're now we're saying focus on the business rules, the what, when, why of what kind of notifications exist in your world, when they get posted, what they mean. Like, the system doesn't want to know that you have a geofencing feature or what your social graph is. That Android doesn't care about all that. You define all of those rules. The only thing that we're moving over to Android settings is how it behaves once it gets on screen or on vibrator or on speakers. And that's the thing that then the user can make editorial control of later. OK, there are some questions when we re-describe this about, OK, well, I don't know how to organize my channels. Do I have one per, I don't know, like just one? Do I have, OK, so here's our recommendation. Pick something that makes sense. Pick something that is going to make sense to your user such that if the user says, oh, I kind of want this set of things to behave differently, that defines your channel. So let's say that it's you're in some kind of business chat app. Like maybe every room is its own channel. Your app might even call them channels already. Or perhaps a different topic in a news app. Or a different sender, different chat group in a messaging app. Anything that you want the user to tweak in isolation, or anything that you need to behave differently from your other notifications, put it in its own channel. Because remember, everything in a channel behaves exactly the same way. They all have the same behavior so the user can understand and control it. We give you one additional level of hierarchy just for presentation, just to make it a little easier to organize in the settings app. They're called notification groups. I didn't show you the code for that. It's really easy. Just give it its title and assign it to each channel as you create it. This allows you to sort of segment channels, as we've done here. It's really useful for example, multiple accounts. So again, this is the settings app inside Android. And you can see I've got one account, channel, 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 another account, channel, channel, channel. So you can control all of that independently. And again, the user may never, ever see this screen. They may just see notifications doing exactly what they want. But if you long press it and you say, oh, this is calls, you go in here, oh, it's calls specifically from my personal account. Now I can make changes to that. Many of you are already sitting there thinking, well, OK, I see some ways around this. So we've been thinking about this for a little while. Let's walk through it. First thing is that apps have a million ways to be cruel to the user. Stopping them is impossible. What we want to do is deal with obvious things, right? Because an obvious abusive app like results in uninstalls or results in bad ratings, bad reviews. You don't want that, OK? So now we have to worry about the sneaky things. And for sneaky things, again, we want to either prevent them if we can or move them into the obvious category, which we know how to deal with. So here's an example of something that an app could do. Oh, well, if the user changes the channel settings, like, oh, I want to block that channel or I want to put it in BTW, well, what if I just change it back? And our mitigation for that is the API doesn't let you. Once the user has voted, the channel is locked. You can't make changes to it after you've created it. The user has the final say in what that channel does, period. OK, all right. So OK, if I can't change the channel settings, I'm just going to delete that channel that has properties I don't like and create a new one. OK, fine. Thanks for gaslighting the user. So what we do in the settings app is we actually show you how many channels the app has deleted. We don't show you exactly what they are for privacy reasons so that an app can actually clear its state and not leak information about you. But you can go into settings and say, yeah, I feel like I've blocked that like 5 times before. Oh, yeah, sure enough, 5 deleted channels. OK, now the app's malfeasance is obvious. OK, well, all right, I feel like I just want to opt out of all of this. Could I please just make one channel for everything? You can do that. And if your app only has one thing that it does, like it just chimes on the hour, that probably makes sense. But if what you're doing is saying, I want my critical notifications to be tied in fate to my recommendations or my speculative notifications, then the user's going to have a bad time and you're going to have a bad time because all those notifications will behave the same way and they'll get blocked together. OK, wrapping up on channels. You set up your categories. After that, the user's in control of how they behave. The user happiness should be your goal. You work to make the user happy. The user will get the notifications that they want, that you want them to see. Everybody gets their dopamine and serotonin and norepinephrine and I think that's, no, anyway. One more thing that I want to mention before we go, and we only have another minute left. Channels are mandatory once you target O, specifically once you target API 26. Before API 26, you can start using these APIs and start moving your notifications over to channels piecemeal. Once you start targeting O, any notification you post that doesn't have a channel gets dropped on the floor. I shouldn't have done that with the clicker. A notification gets dropped. It never shows up for the user. So this is definitely something that you have a limited amount of time to move everything over, sort of take a look at your notifications, organize them into channels. You'll be amazed at how many teams are like, oh, I didn't even really realize how many notifications we post. What a great time to take stock and clean house and get things organized. So that you can go from this situation where all the notifications are competing for your attention and draining your will to live, and go to this situation where there's nothing on this slide. Go to this situation where the user sees the ones that they want to see in the order they want to see them and is very happy and blinky, and so forth. Oh, one last thing, and we've got almost no time. We did introduce badges on app icons. That sort of slipped out in the keynote, a kind of a late-breaking thing. But we wanted to do the Android thing and make them low anxiety, give the user control over them, make them look nice, and fundamentally make them oriented around our notification system. So what you'll see in the beta is what we call notification dots. The dot just means there are notifications for this app. You get to choose as an app which of your channels get dots. So for example, a music player wouldn't have a dot for its playback controls, but it would have a dot for its recommendations. And users can turn those on and off per channel or globally across the system as they will. If you dismiss a notification, the dot disappears, so the user's in total control.